And welcome back to Sullivan's Backstage Pass. I'm here with Annie. Annie, thank you so much for joining me today.
My pleasure, Sean. Thank you so much for having me.
So I have to say, like, I'm geeking out because I've listened to your the albums that you have, and I really appreciate that the little gravelly noise that you have in your voice. It just lends itself to like the songs. So, like, how did you get started in music in the first place?
I really didn't come from a musical family. It was something that I had to fight for. I first started playing the flute at 8 years old, and that was something that was socially acceptable in the kind of environment that I grew up in. I grew up in Sydney, Australia, so it's a very large cosmopolitan city. But my parents were both from small country towns, and I guess they had a lot of small country town ideas. And so yeah, classical flute was certainly socially acceptable, but I knew from probably 9 or 10 years old that I wanted to play bass guitar, even before I really knew what the thing was. So I just, I can still remember it now. I had like just this picture in my head of myself with a blue Fender P bass jamming along. For some reason, I just had this vision in my head. And so that was really what I wanted. And of course, I expressed this quite vocally and frequently. And it was told, no, no way. Uh-uh. Ain't no way that's happening. So I guess I must have been pretty insistent about it. And so eventually I got told, well, your brother has this electric guitar rusting in the corner that he doesn't use. So if you show us that you're diligent about your studies and you do well on this guitar, then maybe you'll have a chance at some point down the track of getting yourself a bass. So I guess I must have shown them how many hours that I spent like locked in their room making noise. And eventually I was successful in getting the bass guitar that I'd asked for. So it was definitely, it was something that I had to fight for to get my start in music. It did not come easily. I remember a really a defining moment was when my older brother brought home the album Led Zeppelin 2, and I heard like the opening track, Whole Lot of Love, coming out of the speakers for the first time. That my mind was absolutely blown. I said, "What is this?" I probably the first blues recording that really had me pay attention was hearing Paul Butterfield Blues Band playing Born in Chicago. That was another moment that really stands out to me. And over my history of recording and writing songs, I guess it's really, particularly with this latest album, which I'm sure we're going to talk about, I've definitely gravitated more towards the blues rock side of things.
So as you progressed through your musicianhood, if you will, and so you've picked up the guitar, you picked up the bass. At what point did you start to realize that you're pretty good at this?
Oh, gee, it's, I guess in my teens, because I became pretty focused on music very early on, and I knew when I was still in my early teens that that was just all that I wanted to do with my life. So, for example, I moved out of home when I had just turned 17 and started a bachelor's degree majoring in contemporary music. So I moved away from Sydney. I moved to a small town on the northeast coast of my home state of New South Wales, and went to the what was at the time the only contemporary music degree in all of Australia. So there was classical available. You could study just classical or just jazz, but this was the first contemporary music degree that there was. So as I said, just turned 17, rolled on out of home, and went to go study music straight away, and it was incredible. Yeah, what an
So
amazing experience.
if there was only one program, was it very competitive to get in?
It was. It definitely was. There was, a lot of people there to audition. So I think I got really lucky and just impressed the bass instructor somehow in my audition and got in, which was great. So I've had some just a couple of really lucky moments along the way in my career.
And then after you get into school, was there a point when you sort of decided that genre that of your choice was gonna be sort of blues?
Yeah, definitely. I'd really been gravitating towards the blues for a long time. I always listened to a broad range of music, and I still do. I appreciate really like anything that's performed well. But I was very heavily influenced by Stevie Ray Vaughan for a long time. I mean, that Texas blues sound so many people have been over the years. He was just such an icon, and definitely that sound and that kind of blues was what I really wanted to play. And later on, actually, I was lucky enough to meet Jana, who was his girl at the time that he passed away. And she was my yoga teacher in Florida. And that was how I met her. It was quite a story that I walked into yoga class, which I had just come from tonight. So I walked into hot yoga class, and there's this beautiful woman at the desk, and me being, an Australian in Florida, and I heard her accent because, of course, she's from New Zealand. And she said, "Hi, I'm Jana." And I just looked at her and said, "Huh." Because there was something in the back of my mind of, "Wait a second, this lady looks really familiar." And then she said to me, "Oh, Australian. I'm from New Zealand." I said, "Yeah, I can tell." Anyway, I had a brief chat to her at the front desk, and then she led the yoga class, and I was just staring at her all the way through, saying, "Wow, she's really beautiful. She looks like model." And then I went home and did some Googling and just turned on the music video for Stevie Ray Vaughan, "The House is a Rockin'." And there she is, shaking her booty on my screen. And I said, "Oh my goodness, like I knew it." That was a fantastic experience, and I got to know her quite well, and and to have some good talks about the Stevie years. So that was just really a great, again, one of those really lucky moments that I've had in my career. I guess he passed in 1990, I think, and I would have been 12 then, so kind of a little too young to get to any concerts, but I did really have that really special moment of connection.
So then, what prompted your decision to try out for the International Blues Challenge?
So I tried out for the International Blues Challenge in Australia a couple of times unsuccessfully, and never made it. And of course, those efforts were just like wanting to get to the United States, wanting to be noticed and to become the next big thing. My very first album that I released in Australia was just meant to be a demo, a good quality demo, and it got picked up by what was the biggest blues label in Australia at the time, which is Black Market Music. It was really unheard of them the offer to release something for someone who was like a complete unknown at the time. And so it was really wanting to just get in front of the American audiences was what got me to apply for the IBC. I finally did become successful in, I guess it was 2016, when I was living in Florida, and I represented the Treasure Coast Blues Alliance there. Got to the semifinals, and yeah, it was an amazing experience.
And so when you got started in like in your path and started doing performances on Australia, how do you compare the audiences to Australia to like audiences in America? Are there a lot of similarities or are there some things that stand out as a little unique?
I mean, there's a lot of similarities, but I think American audiences on the whole, like they're less reserved. They're more likely to just like let their hair down and let loose a little bit more. I think Australians, although they uh it's the cultures are really quite different. Australians have that real, we call it a larrikin spirit. You know, they're very don't take themselves too seriously, but at the same time, people tend to be a little more reserved and a little more, I think, wanting to conform, not wanting to stand out so much. Whereas in America, we really have that rugged individualism thing going on, and I think people are just yeah, they're just less likely to care what everybody else is gonna think if they just get on down to the dance floor and start shaking it on down, you know?
And one of the things I'm curious about too is because I really enjoy that cover that you have on the Split Second album. Is that sort of like an homage to like Thelma and Louise?
Oh, yeah, yeah. It definitely was. It was, d the Split Second album is the only album that I've ever made where I had 0 creative input, into anything. So I'm gonna go ahead and just say that the ball was not in my court for any of that. It was all Joe Moravia from Blues Leaf Records kind of calling the shots on that one. So that was really different for me, making music in that way because always in the past I had been in complete creative control. Like I had decided what the artwork was going to be. I had decided, what songs were gonna be on the album and just how they were all gonna be presented. So it was actually yeah, it was kind of a shock, having someone else, like, really be in control of all that stuff, and I guess it probably made me realize that, like, I am a total control freak. I don't wanna work with a record company in charge of, like, everything in that way. I really wanted more freedom in my art, so I did end up only releasing, I guess, only recording that one album with Blues Leaf and just going my own way for the rest of the music that I've released.
And I will always be an advocate for musicians who take control of their artistic vision because like only you have the complete picture of what you want to see. And I really appreciate that you take that approach of like full control over your music. One of the things that I'm curious about that I ask every musician that comes on the program because I do believe the muse is a living breathing thing. So when the muse visits you, how do you capture that? Do you like have a recorder nearby? Do you write stuff down? Like when you get musical ideas, what steps do you take to make sure that you don't lose them?
I'll just sing lines into my phone, into the voice recorder app on the phone, or write things down. And I like how you put that the muse comes to visit you because I feel that when I'm trying to force it, when I'm saying to myself, you know, looking at my watch, oh, I better sit down and have a songwriting session right now. Those are the times when I'm just like putting my head in my hands at the end and just wanting to cry by the end of that time. I find like when things just come to me spontaneously is the best time. This latest album that I'm recording right now, it's called "Men Are Like Potato Chips," and we're looking at a May June launch. We've got like one more song to mix, and then it's done. But that one, it's yeah, there I mean, there was one song, it's called "Stalker," and that song came to me while I was driving in the car on the way to, my friend's home studio to work on some demos, and so that one just, like, came to me spontaneously, like, the whole thing at one time, and we, recorded our first demo version of it that afternoon. So it got recorded like in its first form the day that it was born. Whereas there's been songs that have taken like a really long time to come together. So the title track, "Men Are Like Potato Chips," I've had that idea just kind of going around in my head for, like, at least the last 5 years before I actually completed the song, and there's one on there called "Cheetah" that I started writing, maybe, like, 2015? So, yeah, some of these things can take a while to come together. You gotta catch the muse while she's there.
And you never know, like you're saying, like, just driving down the street, it's gonna come and visit you, and it's like, "Ah." And then some people joke about that song, the best song in the world, "Tribute,"
Oh,
but
yes.
that's legit. Like,
Yeah.
that is possible it can happen. So when you recorded this latest album, did you record it in, like, separate sessions, or did you record it, like, as a band together in, like, a playthrough?
It was recorded in separate sessions, and actually, this is the first time that I have, well, I've done other albums in separate sessions with quite a bit of time, like, removed, like, that was how I did my last album, Blow Up Doll, but this is the first time that I've actually had people doing parts, like, completely remotely. So, for example, I have, Tim Langford of Too Slim and the Tail Draggers as a special guest, and I am based in Portland, Oregon, and he's based in Boise, Idaho, so it's a good 9-hour drive. So rather than, just kind of like flying him out here for a day to get into the studio, I just had him do his part in his home studio, and it sounds like amazing. He could have been like standing there right there with us. He actually made me cry. I mean, what he did with that song is just fantastic. It's really amazing. He plays on the only cover on the new album, and it's Angel from Montgomery. Yeah,
I
and
love that.
the really special thing about that too is that this is another reason why the album was kind of recorded in separate blocks, was because my son Flynn sings that song as a duet with me. So, I he lives in Australia, and while as I'm based in the United States now, and so we don't get to see each other a lot. And he has a spectacular voice. He has a degree in music theater. So he's 23 years old and is a trained vocalist, and his voice is just absolutely gorgeous. And I really wanted to have the chance to record something like with my son that was very special and meaningful for me to do that. So at a time when he just happened to be visiting, got him in here to do that, and then did the rest of the album kind of in pieces. Yeah.
That's awesome. That's gotta be, like, one proud mama moment too, right?
It was such a proud mama moment. I still have photos of him at 5 years old in the recording studio when I was recording my second album, and there was a day when I just couldn't get anyone to take care of him, and I said, "Okay, Flynn, you're coming to the studio, buddy. You're gonna be like, it's just gonna be like you with the mom, so, like, please be good." And he was a perfect angel. He wore his this Batman tie because because it was such a special occasion that, like, he wanted to get dressed up, and I have to say very little has changed, like, he and the Batman are still, like that, they're him and the Batman have an intimate relationship still.
Oh, that's perfect.
Mhm, yes, and
Oh,
5 years old in the recording studio wearing his Batman tie. I have these precious memories of him as, like, a small child, yeah, in the studio with his mom, and just to kinda come full circle and have him as an adult, was yeah, was just priceless.
so something else that I usually ask musicians is on this podcast is about what they love about performing in front of a live audience. What is it about performance that keeps you coming back, right? Because musicians and artists as yourself, you were doing it for the passion of the music, and it's a lot of work. And so I just want to acknowledge that with the amount of work and the amount of time and dedication you put in, what is it about the audience that means so much to you?
It's a totally unique way of connecting with other human beings. It's, something that you just you really can't do, I don't think, in any other way, to just be able uh to get your ideas across to a big crowd of people at one time, to have them feel what you feel in the stories that you tell is just incredible. And that ability to make people move their bodies, like, spontaneously and involuntarily, I think is just amazing. Also, for me, I find that when I'm really into it and the night is going really well, I'll get into that flow state, and just everything else falls away. It's almost like an out of body experience is the way that I would describe it. That there's just no sense of time or even sense of self. Like, I've had these times when there's just there's just nothing. I'm just one with the music, and that kind of experience is like it's almost spiritual. You know what I mean? It is just so um so incredible, and you really can't have that feeling any other way. And I guess those few times that everything's clicked into place and that's happened to me have been enough to just keep me chasing that feeling for a lifetime. And you're right, it hasn't always been easy. I've had to do a lot to actually get to performing. Like, for example, now that I'm living on the West Coast, I went and did a tour to Florida a couple of years ago. Now, where things just worked out that there was the budget only for me to drive a van load of music equipment and PA equipment to Florida alone and pick up my Portland band at the airport when I got there. Now, there was no budget for hotel rooms along the way. So I slept in my car on a futon mattress. I used my Planet Fitness membership. I stayed in the parking lot of Planet Fitness gyms along the way so that I could shower every morning. And yeah, spent a week driving across to the East Coast, and that was how I made that tour happen. And on the way home, did the same thing in reverse. And it was, yeah, it was a lot. So it's really just that joy of playing music is enough that there's not a lot that I would not do to make it happen.
And quite frankly, you can tell in your music, right? I can tell the amount of work that went into everything that you have put out there, and I want to acknowledge that. And also, from a musician's perspective, right? One of the things that I love talking about is the importance of that relationship between the venue and the musician. However, sometimes when you get to a venue, it doesn't necessarily have everything you need to be successful. So if you're like thinking about venues, what could a venue do to make it better for you as a musician to perform?
They can say, "Play as loud as you bloody well like. Turn up. Everybody turn up to 11. Turn up to 12, god damn it."
Right?
Louder. Listen. Oh, you got me going there. I'm like bright red now with like passion and oh boy. Yeah. That would be, like, honestly my number one gripe, and we're being seriously, it's like, it's not that loud, but just that yeah, I think that is the biggest frustration of, like, being your owners just, yeah, wanting you to come in and play music and then telling you you're too loud and that you need to turn down, and, like, you'll turn down more, and quiet. Like if people are drinking wine, like wine tastes better when everything else is very, very soft.
And here's the thing with that whole situation, right? Because this I know is true. If you turn down the volume, the people in the audience are gonna wonder what happened. And so it actually goes against what the venue wants to happen anyway. And so it's always been a source of frustration for me. I totally get that 100%. Uh,
Yeah, but it really is the way, yeah, it's better. So, you know, what are you gonna do?
yeah, sometimes you just have to do what the venue wants.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you wanna get asked back again or, sometimes you might get a bit of an attitude and make sure you don't get asked back again.
Right? Something else I'm curious about your perspective, um, because I've talked to a lot of musicians, and we talked about the importance of getting along with your bandmates. When you're putting a band together or you're doing a recording, how important is it for you to get along with everyone else in the band?
Oh, to be perfectly honest, that hasn't always been a consideration, and it's definitely oh, I mean, there's been there's been times when I've just wanted to,
No.
when I've just wanted to get out of the car and start walking. Yeah, I really the thing is that musicians and people who have the availability to be a touring musician is usually someone who doesn't have a lot of responsibilities in their life. That they have the ability to just be able to pick up and sail on out of town. So, unfortunately, sometimes those people can have not a very strong sense of responsibility. Which has sometimes been challenging in the past. So yeah, I have always like really tried to look for people who can do the job, who can cut it musically is the most important thing for me. And then the personalities, well, we'll see how that goes along the way. Sometimes it's wonderful, but it hasn't always been hugs and smiles and let's go out for ice cream after the show.
That's fair. So in terms of your last album, how did you come up with the title?
The most recent one, Men Are Like
Yeah,
Potatoes.
yeah.
I decided that was going to be the title track because it was just so catchy. And, in terms of my personal life, I've been married and divorced 3 times now, so don't have a real good track record there. I did a lot of I did a lot of online dating for a couple of years until I just completely gave up. Because the lyrics are like, men are like potato chips. I can't stop at one, but I kind of worry now that men are like potato chips. I have officially reached the bottom of the bag.
Oh, I love that.
So that's where I'm at.
But they say I really do believe that when it's from the heart and your music is about what's really happening in your life, it leads to the best music. It
Oh,
really does.
it definitely is about what's happening in my life. there's a lot. Actually, the collection of songs on this album is very interesting. As I said, it spans, ideas that I've been throwing around, some of them for as long as a decade, and the subject matter is really quite out there in some of them. I know it's going to horrify the blues community. Like for years, I've been like really wanting to be nominated for a BMA. That was my next big goal. And I kind of, I guess I had some like bad luck with the timing of my last album. It was like a release right at the start of COVID. All the radio stations had actually shut down. Like all those DJs who were in the college radio stations couldn't actually get into the buildings. It's all my launch gigs got cancelled, and the whole thing just kind of, tanked really. So I was like, oh well, this album really isn't going to get any traction, and with this most recent one, Men Are Like Potato Chips, I just threw the idea like out the door that this was ever going to be nominated for any kind of award anywhere, and just really made the music that I wanted to make because it was fun for me. There's a lot of like very danceable tunes on here. There's a couple of slow ones, but not too many. And there's a song about like getting stalked, which was a real world experience for me. There's a song about going out and dating a Sasquatch, which was kind of, well, I mean, metaphorically a real world experience, because I have like managed to make some really hairy
Oh, that's great.
I I don't know what you're gonna leave in and what you're gonna edit out. I'm thinking like, yep, you're gonna leave every single word of this in, and I'm like, I'm never gonna perform again.
Oh, I wouldn't be worried about that at all. Uh, well, but you're kind of right. The dating world out there right now is scary. Like, there are so many creeps out there, both men creeps and women creeps. Like,
Ugh.
they're there, and so I feel you. It took me forever to find my girlfriend now, and I was just about ready to give up because I have been on some of the wildest dates you've ever even imagined.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
can't even begin to imagine with you.
Yeah, I think with the camera off, we can like compare.
But I wanna
Um,
circle back to the music piece.
yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. Sure. Like experiences from like real world things that have been happening to me. And also, like I said, I just totally said that's it. I'm going for it. Like we're going as controversial as we can. Am I allowed to swear on the podcast?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, fantastic. Because there is a song there. I had never ever used curse words in my music before. I'd always been really careful not to do that. I always thought, oh, if you need to do that, then you're just not thinking hard enough. You could always come up with another word. But after a bit of soul searching, I said, fuck it, let's do it. There's a song on the new album called Big Jam, which stands for fuck, I'm good. Just ask me. Yeah, so we totally went for it. It was it was one that kind of came together really near the end of the recordings. It was like, oh, don't know, should I or shouldn't I? Yeah, I definitely should. And the thing is, like, it's just it's grown a life of its own already. It's become so catchy, that even there's kind of like already a little dance that me and the guitarist were doing while we were in the studio that's like kind of ready for TikTok, you know what I mean? So yeah, get ready for it to like blow up on all the social medias because we're going there.
But I really appreciate that you had that opportunity, right? Because, like, do you think that you feel a little more pressure because this is what your sort of passion project is?
I feel a lot of pressure anyway.
That's
Um,
fair.
yeah, I'm really hard on myself, and I kind of I have to remember that like this is my music, like it's going out worldwide. That I'm always surprised when I hear from just bands like all across the globe. People who don't even speak English as their first language will be contacting me and saying, "Annie, hey, we're doing this cover song of yours. Can you please like tell us what the lyrics are? Because our English is not that good, so just wanted to check of like the we got the words right and so on." And that just always like amazes me, and I feel, so grateful to hear back from them because sometimes you just never know, like, how your music is affecting and influencing other people, so that's always a really special moment to say like, "Oh, wow, people actually were paying attention, what do you know?"
And we are our own worst critics. Like, we are so much harder on ourselves than we would ever be on anyone else. And so one of the things that I wanna talk to you a little bit about, in terms of, the album creation piece, uh, and strike that, sometimes my autism gets in the way. The question I wanna ask is, how did you end up in Portland of all places?
Well, I moved to Florida when I first started living in the United States and really enjoyed it there. But I guess I had a bad relationship and really wanted to be as far geographically away from Florida as I could be for a long time. So that's how I ended up in Portland, Oregon. I remember. Uh, I was driving, like, away from Florida, really with no particular destination in mind, and I called some musician friends of mine who were based in Seattle at the time, and I was, like, crying on the phone to them, and I remember hearing, like, kind of, this kind of all this noise in the background and me saying, like, "Yeah, I'm driving away. I've got no idea where I'm even going." And them saying, "What? We're naked right now." And I said, "What? Where are you?" And they're like, "We're playing this gig. There's like a blues festival at a nudist colony, and we're naked. Yay!" And through my tears and misery, I knew that I wanted one of these summer times for that to be me saying, "Yay, yay, we're naked," and playing at a festival and playing at a festival where everybody had their clothes off. So that did eventually get to be me a couple of years later. I remember this conversation and they were saying like, just drive to Seattle. Just come on up to Seattle. And I was sobbing and like, I don't want to go to Seattle. Seattle's too big and scary. And they said, "Well, maybe you'd like Portland." And the rest is history, and I've been here for, I guess for, 9 years now. So I've kind of gotten used to the cold and the snow, and it's yeah, I guess the Pacific Northwest is still home for now.
And so in terms of, like, when you do your live performance, like, did you pick up on like, how did you pick up on that nonverbal communication piece, right? Because I'm always fascinated by live performances and just watching how the band members communicate without communicating. Was that a skill you picked up along the way, or were you always sort of, like, good at that nonverbal communication piece?
Mm, I think, I mean, you get better at it along the way, but I've certainly like the band that I play with live, we've been playing together for a couple of years now, and it's although I still do use like pickup bands around the country too, and that's always really fun and exciting. But I usually tell them like, "What's my foot? This foot here, like this foot, like right here, this one." That one. What's that foot? Because it's gonna, like, stomp and tell you of yeah, it's gonna telegraph for you and warn, like, where the stops are coming and so on. So just, like, watch for the foot, things like that, and just to yeah, like body language and so on. So like watching for that foot going down or kind of like with the headstock of the guitar. It's kind of a little difficult for me because I'm singing and playing, so I can't turn around to give anybody cues while I'm singing. I have to, so I have to do it with my body somehow. So, like I said, it's either because my hands are busy and my face is facing away from the band, glued to the mic. So I have to somehow use my body to give them a cue of what's happening next.
And then in terms of, like, the performance piece, uh, some artists prefer the drummer to keep track of the count. Other bands prefer the bass player to sort of keep count. Uh, for your rhythm section, who do you rely on most to keep the time while you're playing?
I usually like to count the songs in myself because I like to set the tempo. Like the drummer can kind of like work with me to do that, but I really want to set the tempos that I'm most comfortable with because sometimes it's if it's just that little bit too slow or that little bit too fast, it can make it really difficult for me and turn a performance from being a great experience into a not so great one. So yeah, I like to be the person setting the time. I guess to me, as a bass player, like bass and drums, the rhythm section, although they're separate instruments, they really should function as one. And your job is just to lock in together as best as you can and just work with that person. So sometimes if the drummer is like wanting to speed up a little bit more, I can try and hang back a little. But eventually I'll probably have to like go with go with them. It's just staying together, trying to work as a unit is how I see the rhythm section functioning.
And then do you remember the first bass you ever picked up?
The first bass I owned, my first bass was a Samick short scale 4-string bass guitar. Yeah. That was a pretty cool little instrument. Yeah. I just
Did
recently, my son, Flynn, being the good son that he is, he got me a birthday present, which is like a Cordoba ukulele bass. So like it's a little short scale bass. It's acoustic electric. And it's like it's badass. It is so cool. I find it's great because I can just take it with me to travel, just throw it in the car. If it gets stolen, I'd be sad, but I wouldn't be, but I wouldn't be out of pocket that much. And yeah, it's honestly, it's fantastic to just be able to bring around with you really easily. And just like when I get a few minutes when I can, if I'm out and about, then it means I can play some bass, which is wonderful.
and, was it, challenging to pick up singing and playing bass at the same time?
I've been doing it since I was 14 and I'm 48 now. So it's just been years and years of practice. I have to say some of the, I guess it was difficult actually with this new album. There's a lot of bass lines that are like really, really syncopated and very syncopated against the vocal that I'm doing. And it actually took like a long time and a lot of practice to be able to sing and play those. I think I really, yeah, I've kept it more simple on a lot of my previous albums, but I just wanted to stretch myself and challenge myself like that little bit more this time. So while it took a lot of work, like the result is great. Yeah, I'm glad I challenged myself technically a little more this time.
And one of the things that I want to talk to, because it's a lot of a lot of listeners are up and coming musicians, and I would like you to talk to the new aspiring musicians out there. What advice do you wish you could have had as a young artist that would have helped you in your career?
I wish someone had said to me, just look at every rejection as getting closer to someone saying yes. Try and yeah, don't take it personally because you're not going to get every gig and every festival. Not everyone's going to love what you do, but every time someone says no, it gets you closer to someone saying yes. So just don't be afraid to like put yourself out there and keep applying for things because you just never know when you're going to get that golden ticket. Yeah.
And then how important is practicing?
Practicing is super important. It's funny. I was just, as I said, with being able to like just row a bass guitar in the car. That's really important to me because like my schedule is so hectic at the moment. I'm doing music part time now, and because I recently went back to school and became a nurse. So I'm working full time. I'm actually working like, well, I'm working two nursing jobs at the moment. And so I'm doing like at least 60 hours a week right now of work, and then doing music on the side as well. So yeah, it's been super hectic. But honestly, it was the right decision for me, just because without doing that, I just wouldn't have had the finances to be able to record another album again. And the I knew after that, tour that I referenced earlier of, like, having to sleep in my car all the way across the country, there's there's a limit to what your body can take. And after doing that, I really realized, whoa, that put me like really close to my limit. And I'm not getting any younger. That there's only, there's only so long that you can do those kinds of things. That, that's definitely a young person's game that 10 years down the road from now, I simply won't be able to cope with something like that. So kind of seeing the writing on the wall from that perspective, I just said, yeah, this is something's got to change here. So yeah, I went back to school and retrained, and now I feel like I've got the best of both worlds. I know they've called me Hannah Montana at work a couple of times.
Come on, people. Uh,
But I mean, it's kind of true because I didn't I was just doing, like, all kinds of, side work that I thought would be flexible for me, and it turns out, like, now that I've got a full-time job, that I've actually got a lot of flexibility in my scheduling, and I've already like accrued a lot of paid time off already. So it actually turned out, yeah, I thought, oh, I can't get a real day job. It's going to be too restrictive. But that's actually not the case. And kind of like doing the real day job thing is I think allowed me to, I think, push the music even more really in some ways.
yeah, and I would imagine it's the kind of profession where, like, if you get the chance to, support humans, in a very positive light. Like that's like the perfect job for me anyway. It's like my day job pays for the podcast and all that stuff because sometimes the passion projects, they take funding,
Yes.
and music is a passion project. It really is.
And it sure is. And my career is actually working in behavioral health. So I work in a facility where we only take people who are psychiatric patients or are there for substance detox. And I actually really love my day job. It's the great thing about it is that it's never boring. Um,
Right?
yeah. Obviously, for privacy reasons and so on, I can't go like too much into the specifics of what goes on. Yeah, that's all I'm gonna say is like my job is never boring. And you just don't know what you're going to run into from one day to another. And I find I'm really thriving in that environment. I am kind of an adrenaline junkie, and there's definitely situations at work where I'm like, my heart is pounding like a million miles a minute. And but it's been fantastic. I think it really does take a special kind of person to work in this kind of field. I think you have to be I think you have to have your own challenges with mental health to really understand what other people are going through. And oh boy, I definitely do. Those workplaces where they have that sign, you don't have to be crazy to work here, that it helps. Yeah,
Yeah. I
that's all I
I
can say.
I can't even mention but I can't even mention the job that I have, just saying that I relate to your, like, comments on so many levels. Uh, so, we're rounding out our conversation, do you have anything coming up besides the album release? Are you playing any gigs in Portland anytime soon?
Let's see, not in Portland itself, at the end of this month, what we're in March. So I have a run down to California to like uh, the Bay Area, but like inland to wineries or something. So playing, like Southern Oregon, hopping down to California, doing something near the border on the way back. So just again, short things I can fit in with work, and I'm going to back to Boise, Idaho in the middle of April. I did a great show there at the end of last year. So just yeah, wanting to get back there as soon as I can. I'm playing the Gorge Blues and Brews Festival in June here in Oregon. So it's not that far from Portland. It's like about an hour from Portland. So yeah, like nothing in town real soon, but yeah, doing a bit of traveling, just wanting to get out there on the road and get some, I guess, get some publicity and some interest in the new album from some new non-local audiences.
And then in terms of, like, the new album, how would you describe it for people?
Blues rock with a lot of cursing.
Love it.
Lot of heavy breathing too. There's some interesting use of my voice and my breath specifically on like a lot of different tracks. Like I'm using breathing as percussion. I'm using breathing as like almost like horror movie kind of noises. So on one of the tracks, like behind the guitar solo, it's a track called Devil Bride. So, so yeah, so I wanted that horror kind of noises. So I'm doing a lot of kind of sounds like that. Which yeah, and so like with a bit of effects on that, it just sounds like, like an alien or a demon or something like that in the background. It was really cool. So like honestly, we had so much fun with this album. There's a lot of very tongue-in-cheek stuff going on. There's a couple of different sound effects that we had to play with, like there's a you can hear like the squirt of a can of shaving cream for the song about the Sasquatch. The shaving cream didn't do it. Like, we had to experiment, like, shaving cream didn't do it, so we had to use, like, whipped cream instead, so I brought whipped cream to the studio, but then the owner of the studio's kids ate it while it was in the fridge, like, we had to go get more, and it just it turned into this whole thing. Uh,
Oh, that's so great. That's all.
yeah, we got super creative.
And I can't wait till it comes out. I'm a big fan. Oh, I love it. Uh, Annie, where can people find your music?
They can find my music on all the streaming platforms. They can search for my website, which is annipiper.com, ANNIPIPER.com, or go to Bandcamp, where they can also buy physical copies of the CD if they actually own a CD player anymore. And even if they don't, the artwork is always something that I've spent a lot of attention to detail on. So they can get themselves a lovely set of drink coasters.
And I have to say it, folks, go to Bandcamp and not download it from the major streaming platforms so the artist gets some money.
We
Just
love
throwing it out there.
Bandcamp.
Yeah. And I'll end the podcast the way I always end the podcast, folks. Be kind. We all live on the same planet. We breathe the same air, and this place would just be a little bit better if we treated everybody with a little dignity and respect. Annie, thank you so much.